So we got a little bit of a late start today because Rumble was having a little issues. Anyway, today is Gateway 7 of the Heroine's Journey. We have covered 1 through 6. I'll do a quick review. So in Gateways 5 through 6, we, the heroine starts to awaken to the spiritual emptiness, her thirst, for success and the illusions of her success. She begins to realize nothing's really going to quench that thirst, and her body just becomes the battleground to constantly chasing all of that success, to prove something to the outer world in order to be validated, in order to feel connected. So that connection starts to experience a lot of static as she experiences a lot of physical symptoms and manifestations of those things. She then moves more into this spiritual experience of awareness that none of this is really filling the cup, but she doesn't know what the cup is yet. So then she moves into the descent. This is the initiation, where all those 5 myths that we talked about in Gateways 2 and 3, the myth of caution, myth of dependency, the myth of inferiority, the myth of love, and the myth of enough, those myths start to crowd into this dark space that she's been initiated into, where, I talked about the symptoms of that, where she begins to awaken. She's got the physical health issues, metabolic, insomnia, mood disorders, her drive and her ambition. And this is Gateway 5. Her drive and ambition seems to be burning out, dwindling, lack of creativity, sort of a disconnection from her sexuality, as well as having more dreams about losing things, losing people, or being lost. And she starts to withdraw. So then the initiation is the descent. So those symptoms that we talked about is this preoccupied, like she's preoccupied in her mind, but she doesn't know by what. The paradox is, though, she knows what everybody else is preoccupied about. And I wanted to emphasize on that a little bit before we go further into Gateway 7, is she is preoccupied by what she doesn't know. However, she knows what everybody else is preoccupied by. This is a very perfect collision of the two-headed dragon as well. So she is aware of the preoccupied minds and content and context of the world around her, because it's reflecting back to her what has been preoccupying her mind, thus separating her body and soul. So it's this lack of inhabiting the body and a disconnect from the soul and operating from the neck up. So it's that just perfect collision of this is what's going. So the more she connects with that and sees that from an observing standpoint, as the observer, she allows these emotions to come up: the grief, the sadness, the tears. Don't know why the fuck she's doing it. She doesn't know what this is. She can't name the tears, but they are there. And then she begins to have a lot of resurfacing memories from childhood, maybe even more recent past events start to come up, and she sees them differently than she did before. These memories begin to resurface, and she's remembering them in a way she didn't remember them before, because there's more context. And the questions, who am I? And what am I doing? And what should I do? And who should I be? Without any answers from the outside world. Again, she was seeking that validation from the outside world. She was that illusion of success, the Atta Girls and the awards and the achievements, everything was being cheered on and applauded by this outside world. But now that she's initiated herself into the descent, she's asking all these questions, but there's no one to answer it. And so she is forced to answer them for herself, which means she has to listen to her soul. So in that initiation, the 18 inches between the heart and the mind is a long road traveled. So when we get into gateway 7, again, I shared how these can overlap. We get into gateway 7 is this desire to want to create with the feminine. And I want to emphasize something really quick, because I think when a lot of people, and I don't disagree with Maureen Murdoch. She's probably one female authors who has extensively written about the heroine's journey. I don't disagree with her. I agree that all the gateways are important to understand, but they do overlap. They do sort of bleed together in many cases. So even though there's 9, 10 gateways, one woman, you, me, we may experience sort of how they blend together 5 gateways or 6 gateways or 4. And so also separate from that is there's the emphasis on the feminine, the desire to reconnect with the feminine. I remember sort of the first time I consciously went through this cyclical journey and that desire to reconnect with the feminine, I sort of came out of my dark little bubble of isolation for a year or so. And I was still, even though I wanted to connect more with the feminine, I still brought with me this idea of what feminine means. And so I was trying to connect to that. I was trying to connect with those. Again, it was all necessary. It wasn't wrong. It just, my next little journey around and the next was different. But so this was necessary. I felt like, okay, I want to move more into my feminine. I understood wanting to reconnect with older women, mentors. I wanted to connect more with my dreams, my intuition, my creativity, my body as a vehicle for my soul. All of those things were these subtle charging energies. And yet still I had a narrative of what that should look like on the outside and how I should present it. I tried wearing more dresses. I was just sharing with Jen prior to us getting on here. I was like, I tried wearing more dresses, more jewelry, a little more makeup. And that was in 2016. So I've made myself around this journey a couple times at least since then. And so as you can see, that didn't really last. This is just who I am. I just am as what some people would call a tomboy. And that doesn't mean I'm less feminine. It just means that my way of expressing and connecting with the feminine self doesn't look like what media or your friends or movies or stories and fables say. And so we all have the maiden archetype within us. We go through developmental archetypal periods in our life. The maiden's usually the first. And I, as a maiden, love to play in the creek and catch tadpoles and ride on the back of my brother's Huffy and do adventurous things. Other girls may have experienced their maiden time with, getting more into Barbies or wearing dresses or listening to certain music. It's all different for every woman. And so when we get into this gateway number 7, I just want to emphasize that what your feminine looks like is you're reclaiming that part of you so you can be more whole. And that part of you is just who you are. It's the way you express yourself. It's your intuition, it's your creativity, and it is your body as a container for the soul. And so when we express that, it's not all going to be the same. And so just want to emphasize on that. So when we're talking about desiring to enter into the feminine, we want to reclaim our feminine self. So just focus on what those universal feminine qualities are. It's intuitive, it's creative, it's wanting to connect to the cycles and the seasons and what phase the moon is in, what my dreams meant last night. Those are very universal energies of the feminine essence. And so when want to connect more with my dreams. It's a very feminine thing. And my dreams are obviously not going to be like everybody else's dreams and vice versa. My creativity is also very different. The way that, I paint or draw is not going to, obviously it's in the artist. This is an expression of your soul. When you do any sort of art, any sort of painting, this is an expression of the soul. So it's going to be very unique. And so when we talk about creativity in terms of a feminine charge, that doesn't always look the same. And I like to use art, painting, drawing, maybe even poetry, writing, anything creative when we're going through this gateway. So one that I like to do is to draw yourself as an embodied feminine. If you're reclaiming the feminine self that you abandoned and denied, the beginning in gateways 1 through 2, what did you abandon? And what, if you fast forward or bring it back up to the front of the line, what would it look like? And how would you mold it into your true expression? And so I like to use art, draw it. Draw the maiden that you abandoned. Draw that archetype. And then draw her grown up as a full expression of yourself, your feminine self. I also want to emphasize that the desire to reconnect with the feminine in Gateway 7 is not a denial of the masculine either. So we want to embody and reclaim the feminine self. It doesn't mean you can't be logical anymore. You can't make judgments. You can't be more active, more yang. We're not creating like this over devouring feminine self. What we understand about the feminine is that it is very cyclical. It follows a cycle. It is just like the menstrual cycle. Mid-cycle, late follicular to ovulation to early luteal, women tend to be more active, more competitive. That the archetypal wild woman comes out. And then, so when we talk about reclaiming the feminine, understand this is in waves. This is in a cycle. These are in the ebbs and the flows. It's not, we're not denouncing masculine qualities at all, but we'll get to that in Gateway 9. So this is reconnecting with that body and spirit split. So living from the neck up. We now want to, add more distance into the heart and that creative self. And so it's just not heart to mind. We kind of started to do that work in the descent and that initiation. Now we're wanting to reclaim the feminine self. So now the heart is the center between the mind and the creative part of the body. So we've got the womb, the second chakra, and we're rooting that. It's all rooted together. So we've got these 3 spots in the body. The heart is the center. So now we're integrating that. That's where the creativity and the intuition and the reclaiming our emotions, understanding them, identifying them, naming them. One that I would say was common for me several times around the journey. So I said, this is a cyclical thing. The hero's journey is very linear, beginning to the end, whereas the heroine's journey, we just sort of kind of go around it throughout our life, re-experiencing things. We can't just reclaim our whole self the first time around. That would probably blow us into pieces. It's very necessary to understand that each time around that little cycle is such a necessary point, because we get around to it again, we'll start to notice what we left behind the first time or what we didn't pick up and bring with us the last time. And that doesn't mean you did it wrong. It just meant like we're taking this sort of journey in a very perfect pattern, and we can only bring with us so much baggage at a time. Although I know a lot of women who do love to overpack, metaphorically speaking. So then we start to look at the 5 myths of caution, dependency, inferiority, love, and not enough. So when we are reconnecting with the feminine, we are redesigning, remolding what our myth is about these things. What is our myth about what it means to believe in ourselves? What is the myth about what it means to honor myself, to care for myself, to be in myself, to love myself, to know myself? That's the myth. You start to work with myth here. So we're taking all of those 5 myths, the double-headed dragons, and we're looking at them as like this. There's no right and wrong. I'm just going to take the best from both and mold it into my own new myth, because this is what I live by. When I talk about this in the is it the values course, Jen, or is it all in the creating change? It might be
in both.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I talk about it in all 3 of these courses on BodhiBuilding, actually. But the core values, I really lay the foundation to it all. It's like when you have a belief about what does it mean to show respect? What does it mean to be shown respect? There's a belief behind how you define that, how you validate your belief. Doesn't mean that belief was wrong. It just means that you also had this unconscious belief behind it. And so, which also may not be wrong, but they often, contradict each other. So we're bridging the conscious and the unconscious together, and they may not match perfectly. They may not thread together very well. So we're redoing the stitching to get them together. That's what integration is. A lot of people skip over. It's so uncomfortable. Trust me. Look at my body language right now. Like, I've been through it. It's not comfy. So if you believe to respect others means that you honor their differences and you allow them to have their own voices, opinions, and belief systems and perceptions of the world around them. You may also unconsciously believe that in order to be respected or shown respect, that you must honor others' beliefs before your own. And therefore, you must be more compliant or not too outspoken because you don't want to offend anyone who has different beliefs. Those 2 beliefs, whether conscious or unconscious, there's nothing totally wrong with them, but we want to thread them together so that they become your myth, your belief. What is respect? Okay, yeah, we respect others for their different belief systems, their different perceptions, different attitudes, the different political affiliations, religions, whatever it is. We respect them. And in order to show them respect, I'm not going to try to get them to think like me or believe what I believe. And I'm not going to be combative or argumentative. This is bringing the unconscious into the conscious. And I'm also not going to disrespect myself by lying and withholding and being compliant to others' beliefs that do not match my own. That's what we call threading it together and creating your own myth. We work with beliefs. Again, the short one on the far left, your core values, it's free. Anyone watching this now can go on BodhiBuilding and do that course on their own for free. It's very foundational. And I do recommend that as like sort of a prereq for any other work you do. Anytime I have clients, I always have them before our first appointment, go on BodhiBuilding, do the core values. It's like a 15-minute video, but you get a workbook so you can work through it on your own. So that's that. That's the reconnecting with the feminine self basics. So when we want to work with, or we start desiring to reconnect, reclaim that feminine self, we see ourselves, our sexuality as more of a spiritual practice. It's an embodied practice. Sexuality doesn't mean how sexy am I? How desirable am I to others or the world? And it starts to, those thoughts start to become more muted. It's more of this feminine consciousness is rising within us. And that in itself is an expression of her sexuality. It's her creativity, her eros. It's rising in her. So it's not just about making babies and then getting that body back, or how well I can look, or how much Botox I need. That's all just such silliness. Anyway, that's all. I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to rant on that. But I'm not judging anybody. Of all the things you can do, here I go. I'm ranting. Of all the things you do, if Botox makes you feel beautiful, then it's probably the least harmful of them all. But if you're curious about fillers, just hit me up. I have lots of information on that. Okay. Anyway. So it's not about that. It's not about how you look. It's not how appealing or desirable you are. It's how much you desire to live in the spiritual practice of your sexuality through your being, through your soul expression, all of that. It's a life force in and of itself. It's a life source. And so prior to reclaiming the feminine, we kind of create these either or scenarios all the time. Things are black and white, either or. Our relationships are in chaos. Our attitudes are chaotic. So when we bring sort of the sacred return into our sexuality, we begin to make sense of that chaos. That's what the feminine does. It's like we begin to question ourselves, question our beliefs, allow our intuition to weave into that and redefine them for themselves so that they can become their own life force that is expressed through us. That's very much sexuality. Again, want to emphasize that. When we talk about returning to our own sexuality, it doesn't mean how sexy you are. I think people get, especially when we get a little tripped up on that, we're not over-identifying with our sexuality either. We start to question how we express it, what we think of it, how we see it in others. And so that's not to shut it down. It's not to fear it. It's not to reject the power of it. But it's to reconnect us to the erotic self, which in Eros it's an electrical charge. And that charge can be creative. It can be this productive energy that moves us towards our passions. So when we begin in gateways 5 through 6, and that our ambition we notice we have less ambition, less drive, less creativity, less oomph. Reconnecting into that sexual charge ignites the creativity again. And so that's what it looks like. That's the erotic self being expressed through you. And that can be anything. That could be creating videos on TikTok. It could be planting a garden. It could be painting. It could be writing. It could be, like the first conscious trip I made around the heroine's journey, I wrote a course on women's health and performance. That was very creative. I was allowing this all to pour out of me. And even though the work in itself may have seemed masculine, again, we'll get to that in Gateways 9 and on. That's again, it's in cycles, but the creativity is what allowed me to put that course together. The masculinity in me is what allowed me to do all the scientific analyzations and reading the studies and doing the research and then checking to see if it's quality, science and things like that. Very masculine, but the feminine in me allowed me to put it together in very digestible concepts and chapters, which I love doing, by the way. And so, it's not about how good we are in bed. It's not about how attractive we are, but reclaiming also our right to feel pleasure, to create boundaries, to express ourselves emotionally, to connect through intimacy and vulnerability. It's allowing ourselves to bring the deepest parts of ourselves into the world as an authentic expression. And that is not always a clean and pure image. It can be very messy, but we allow it because that is who we are. And if you have a partner or friends that are safe, they allow it. They allow it. They may laugh at you a little bit, but they allow it. But if you have others in your life that are like, what's the fuck is up with, her? And what's going on with you? Is everything okay? You're acting different. Those are antagonists. Just see it. They're not bad friends. They're testing you. That's the universe's way of testing you, to just see how authentic you can be, even up against these challenges, to express your full life force from whatever feels true and authentic to you. And so I always recommend doing things like artwork, painting, drawing, sketching, using any kind of different mediums, and see what feels good to you to use. Like, what is feminine to you? That creative principle, can be expressed in masculine ways, but the fact of the matter is, it is the creative principle, which is the feminine principle. It doesn't matter how it comes out of you. That is the reclaiming of your feminine self. And again, honoring the cycles, the yang and the yin, the active, the rest, and choose ways in which it feels good to you. And so if you're emerging from that descent and you feel I was explaining it to Jen too, it's like in the descent, you're being initiated, you're in the dark, and just imagine you have a plug and you can't see, and you're trying to plug it into the wall. It's like at some point you finally find it and you feel that electrical charge, and that's what you get, that electrical charge, and you start to have that desire, and you're wanting to put the pieces back together of the chaos. You want to the forest is burned down and now it's time to regrow. The acorns have fallen and now they're seeding, and that's what it feels like. These old stories that you've told yourself, you may not just want to throw them away. You want to contextualize them in new, fresh perspectives and grow. And another way I would look at it too is like, if you have a stained glass window, and that stained glass of different colors create this image that was molded and put together through gateways 1 through 5, and then you kind of held on to it. So that's all the chaos, but it's also who you are. So we don't want to throw stories away. We just want to break that mosaic into all its pieces, lay them out in front of us, and form our own image from them. Not get rid of any pieces. We're going to use all the pieces to just make a new image. That's another art project I do with clients as well. Not specifically with glass, but with the mosaics. I had an image of it. It's in the newsletter, actually, with all the pastel colors and how you can see little images in it. I forgot to upload it on here. Apologize. I would send it. But if you don't get the newsletter, there's a link below. We send them out every week. So Jen, is there anything I'm really skipping over or going too fast that you want me to kind of pause on?
No, I really like the recap from last week. It helps to kind of bring it all into focus for me.
Okay. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Yeah, it's not, it can be messy. It's looking at things. You just start to look at things differently, and you start to create your own myth of what feminine means to you. I wanted to point out too, this book is really great. Dancing the Wheel of Psychological Types by Mary Loomis. It's like 100 pages, but it's so great because she combines Jungian theory with ancient indigenous practices of archetypes and sort of the 4 directions to the 8 directions. And she walks you through the 8 directions, the Star Maiden Circle. This is me on my blackboard teaching. So if you can't understand it very well, again, get the book. It's amazing. And how this also sort of, this archetypal journey from south to southwest to west, all the way up to northwest to east, or northeast to east, is very similar to sort of the archetypal journey a woman will take on the heroine's journey. And I like this for women who may be just learning about this, the heroine's journey. This spells it out, like personality types, characteristics, and traits, all Jungian stuff, along with sort of this silent, ancient lineage or lineages, plural, in our DNA that we sense but can't make sense of. She puts it all together very well, and so it helps you understand that when you're moving through the heroine's journey, there's no one way to be. There's no one archetype to embody. These are all just patterns, and you will express them in your very own way. That's very unique to you. And then when you start on it again, you're going to notice those patterns. You're going to pick up on them, and then you're like, oh, that's what I left behind last time. I'll pick it up this time. I'll bring it with me. And so you'll see the archetypes change each time you go around the journey, but they are your archetypes. So, one of my dominant archetypes now is magician, but last year it was the creator. The year before that, it was the sage. And so, and all those archetypes could also be, similar in and of themselves. The magician and the sage have very similar traits. Another dominant one for me is the jester, or the comedian, or the fool. And so we pick up these emerging archetypes. And I think what makes it so difficult for women in the initiation stage, the awakening to that spiritual emptiness, to the initiation to descent, can be so uncomfortable, is because we've carried certain archetypes for so long, but they're ready to be retired. And we know they're ready to be retired because we start to awaken to this emptiness within us. We've overutilized their usefulness, and they're not going away. It's just there are other archetypes that are trying to emerge, and it's their time now. And that can be a painful split too, is these archetypes got me here, and I really identify with them, and that's part of my pattern, so then welcoming in this new archetype, like for me, magician, I didn't think that would ever be at the top of my pyramid, but I see it as alchemy, healing, more of like using metaphor to work with others, to see others, to relate to the world. It's, again, magician might be your archetype, but it also may show up in you differently than it would me. So Mary E. Loomis, Dancing the Wheel of Psychological Types. It's so great. She talks about the Star Maiden Circle. And I mean, she puts Jung into ancient indigenous practices, and it's beautiful. And so this is me putting it in on a blackboard as I was teaching. And we look over here to the west. This is water. This is the emotional. This is reconnecting. That would be likened to moving into Gateway 7, the desire to connect with the feminine. We're allowing the emotions to express. We're identifying them. We're learning about them. We're learning that it is that pleasure is a sacred right. It is okay that this individuation and learning how to, we learn through pleasure as we start to move into that, in the West. This is the Star Maiden circles. We learn through pleasure. That means we are activated by our passions, by our desire, by our creativity, by our intuition. It's a very feminine force. And then we start moving a little northwest to the north. That's where we learn how to put that into, we create order. We see patterns, we see laws, we see how to create sort of this universal balance, not only within ourselves, but the world around us, and make sense of the greater landscape of the world around us. And then we just keep going. and we keep going, and it's fun. It is literally a journey. And so next week we'll keep talking about Gateway 7 and what it means to reclaim the feminine, what that looks like for some women, especially masculine women like myself. And then we'll move into Gateway 8, which is, we start to reflect on the split between the mother and the daughter. And it starts at the beginning where you did have this separation from your mother, but we didn't leave behind any of our mother complexes. We carried them with us. So now we're going to revisit those in that gateway, and we start to heal that mother-daughter split. That can look like healing a relationship with your own mother, or for women like me who no longer have their mother around, you can heal that spiritually or reconnect that spiritually. But ultimately, it's about reclaiming your own inner mother and healing your own inner mother and inner daughter split, bringing those two together. So that's what we're going to talk about next week. Jen, did I leave anything out?
That was what you just talked about was the one thing I was thinking about. So no, I feel like you covered the book really well. The book is incredible. It really does help to
Yeah.
kind of fill in, yeah, the indigenous part of it just touches me whenever I read that book. It's a very short book. You said that, right?
Yeah, 100 pages.
Yeah,
It's an easy read, but it takes pretty complex
yeah,
concepts and makes
right.
it very digestible. It's wonderful. It's great.
Yeah, and I found that it helped me. I use that book as a tool to
Mhm.
use to look at my, to use it to look at the perspective that I was looking at life, and then using that to kind of integrate and pull back the fragments that I was feeling,
Yeah.
which is, what you're talking about.
Yeah, and it's like every time we go around the heroine's journey, every time we visit the cycle and we're back at initiation again, we've brought with us more life experiences, and all of those experiences add context to what we're working on. So the context just keeps growing and growing. And though it can become more and more difficult, it becomes more and more familiar.
That's right.
So you can't go to the gym for the first time and clean, 160 pounds on a barbell. You start with dumbbells, and then you do some kettlebells, and then you pick up that barbell with good posture, and correct breathing patterns. Um, Another video. Um,
Yeah, we need to do that. We
then
need
you
to
pick up
do
the
that
barbell,
video, Sarah.
and then you clean the barbell, and then after you can get through 12 of those with good posture, you can add a little weight, and then a little more weight. That's like the heroine's journey. It's just each time we're adding a little more weight. It gets harder and harder, but there is comfort in the familiarity of it. And so you're remembering what you forgot every single time, but you're adding more layers to it, and you're bringing in more context to it. And you know where you are. And because, oh, I've been in this descent before. Oh, I've felt this kind of depression before. This is where I must be. I'm familiar with it. I've been here, know what to do. I guess, so I'll sit with it longer, or I'll do this time, or allow this emotion to come up this time. Maybe I'll just really be with that a little bit longer. It doesn't get easier. It just becomes more familiar, and the fruits of it become sweeter each time around. So it's an invitation to really connect. We operate on the ego. The mind and the mental body is really, it's triangulating with the ego all the time. And so we want to bring in the emotional, the intuitive, connect that with spiritual will, which connects you to the wisdom and action and the will to be that, to embody that. And so it's just an invitation to keep moving through it. You have wisdom in every fiber of your being and your physical body, in your creativity. Your sexuality has wisdom, your voice has wisdom, your love has wisdom, your pain has wisdom, everything in you. So it's really intuitively connecting into that by reclaiming your feminine. And if it's your first time consciously around that cycle, I just invite you to, even when it's like icky and messy, just sit with it. I wouldn't call it fun. I'm just saying the other side of it is just, it's beautiful.
Yeah,
Like,
it's authentic.
who doesn't want to be themselves? It's just, yeah, go do that shit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you got to sit with the uglies.
Go with the uglies, and turn them into pretties.
They turn into gold.
You haven't joined us. Join us on BodhiBuilding. We've
That's
got all our courses. We have all our like tons and tons, hundreds of free PDF downloads. Every Monday we meet on office hours. This is live Q&A. Any questions you have around noetic development, relationships, health, fitness, rehabilitation, you name it, like no topic is off the table. And again, there's links below. You can sign up for the newsletter. And we will see you next week for healing that mother-daughter split.